to Leitner. Puts it up.
You're listening to the Culture State Podcast.
Get ready. Woo!
Yes, it is the Culture State Podcast once again. Back up in the nutty building. I don't have a good Jamaican accent, though.
Yeah, I'm not even going to try it.
Yeah, I try. I'm Chris Lee. That is my man, Dennis Jamel Cox, hanging out with you guys right now for another great episode, bro. And it cracks you up every time.
And people are actually going to think my middle name is Jamel, which is going to be great.
It is Jamel, right?
It is. It is now.
Exactly.
Change my first name and everything. It's going to change.
That's what your parents named you.
Exactly. Yeah. 100%.
I heard it was going to be Jamario, but they just felt like Jamel flowed better.
It does. It does. It definitely does. It's a better flow. All right, Chris, before we get more into my middle name, into our guest, Mugsy Bogues, we want to give a big shout out and thanks to our good friends, our sponsor, Papa Murphy's Pizza. Again, Tuesdays, large $10.99 pizzas at Papa Murphy's. Follow them on Twitter and Instagram at Papa Murphy's. Change the way you pizza. They
changed the way you pizza. Our guest today changed the way basketball was played.
Yeah.
If you think about it, the idea of small ball was very foreign and really was foreign until maybe the 2010s, right?
Yeah.
But it was happening in the 90s with the Hornets when you had Muggsy Bogues, Del Curry, you had Alonzo Mourning, you had Larry Johnson, and these guys were running and gunning up the court, fast-paced, shooting threes, an exciting brand of basketball. And they were just one of the teams. I mean, he'll say it right here when you hear the interview. The Hornets led the league in sellouts for a while. People were going to those games because it was cool to go to those games because of how cool that team was back in the 90s. And so, hey, you gotta give it up for the greats. And a lot of that started right here in the state of North Carolina.
It did. And you talk about the Hornets being so popular, starting in the late 80s all the way through the 90s until the franchise went and moved and then Bobcat, whatever. We're not going to get into that. That's dark time of professional basketball here.
Very dark time.
Bobcats. But during that time in the 90s when the Charlotte Hornets were around, I remember growing up, as a kid, seeing Charlotte Hornets stuff in Virginia when we had, the time Washington Bullets and they eventually became the Wizards. We had that closer by, but the Hornets, because they were just so cool, that purple, that teal, it was the cool thing. The colors stood out. They were different. They were fun, like you mentioned. And then, of course, when you get the video game like NBA Jam, when you played, I played the Hornets. That's who I was. Muggsy, Larry Johnson, that was my team anytime I played NBA Jam back in the day. That was the fun thing to do. The Charlotte Hornets were the fun thing, at least in this region, and really for any NBA fan. When the Charlotte Hornets showed up into their town, it was must watch because you didn't see basketball played like that during that time. Yeah. So not only did they change the league, but pop culture wise, it was just a fun thing to be a Hornets fan.
I loved Muggsy, but I also love Larry Johnson, man. Like I wanted the part in the middle of my head like him. I wanted the gold tooth. I wanted to dress up like Grandmama for, during Halloween and everything.
Do you remember back in the 2010, right around that time, when small ball and all that stuff came about? We remember around that time was when retro jerseys were the cool thing to wear, whether throwback NFL jerseys, whatever it was. So during that time in the late 2000s into 2010, I had a friend of mine that I coached lacrosse with up in Virginia. Just a summer club team would oftentimes rock an old school Larry Johnson jersey,
Absolutely.
like pinstripes and everything like that. Yeah. Just because it was cool. It was the fun thing to wear. They had those Hornet starter jackets and all that stuff. They were so in vogue. It's just, they was awesome. I loved it. Yeah. Larry Johnson had a big time impact.
And honestly, I think that team is the reason why, the bringing back the franchise to Charlotte, and as they changed their name back to the Hornets, it kept the team in Charlotte. If they stayed as the Bobcats, it would have been gone a long time ago. St. Louis would have had an NBA team again, or Seattle would have had an NBA team again, or something like that. It would have gone away. Maybe Nashville would have had an NBA team. It's just
Nashville, really? An NBA team in Nashville?
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they could have called themselves something cool. I don't know. But anyway, Nashville Pluckers or something like that. I don't know. But they were, that's the reason why it's back. When they change their names back to the Hornets, and then you have those retro nights where they have the old school looking court. You have the old school Hornet on there, Hornet logo. Like, that's the reason why the team has been able to stay in Charlotte. And this team was super important. And then I wish that it would have kind of worked out with Master P in the Hornets.
Yeah.
Because at that time, Master P was like on the tail end of all of that. And then all of a sudden you have this big time rapper who also can ball a little bit, trying out for that team. If Master P would have been on the team for at least a year, like, that team would have never moved, I don't think, because it would have been solidified. It just would have been like, yo, this is a legendary place to play basketball. It never would have moved. It never would have been Bobcats, and maybe more free agents would have wanted to come to Charlotte.
Chris, after we get, or I want to touch on this after we get our interview with Muggsy Bogues, but we often see what's once again over my head. Once again, I'm going to learn that. But after our interview that we have coming up here with Muggsy Bogues, I want to talk to you about the whole thing with retro and what's old is new again. But before we get to that conversation, Chris, let's get into our conversation with Muggsy Bogues right after.
Yeah. You better call Tyrone and call him Tyrone Muggsy Bogues. Yeah, let's go. All right, we have a special guest today on the Culture State podcast. Of course, if you know anything about the state of North Carolina and basketball, you can't bring up basketball without also including this name, Muggsy Bogues. Of course, Muggsy has a new book that's coming out in May, I believe, right?
Yeah, May, April, right around that area.
And it's called My Life from a Kid in the Projects to the Godfather of Small Ball. And I can't wait to hear to see the book come out. Also, you'll have some words being lent to you by Stephen Curry and also Alonzo Mourning. So first off, Muggsy Bogues, thank you so much for joining us. I just want to ask, outside of the obvious that you're 5'3", what do you think is your major contribution to the sport of basketball throughout your career?
A major contribution throughout the I would say, as a kid being my size, able to overcome and persevere. No one really looked at guys my size capable playing on the highest level. And for someone to be able to overcome or to, break down those barriers and overcome the naysayers, because back then a lot of coaches, more so was guards, big guards. So, that was a stigma that I had to really, really start to, get people away from, to just let them know that anyone who has the ability, who has the skill set, can impact the game, should be given that opportunity.
Absolutely.
How hard was it, even when you got to the professional ranks, to overcome that? Even though you had the skill set and you did everything at the collegiate level, even during your professional career, how hard was that?
Well, I mean, it was challenging. Outside looking in, people probably thinking it was more harder for me. But for me, when you're within it and you believe in yourself and you understand the impact of you have on a game, you know that you're going to make it. You know that things are going to work out for you. That's just the confidence that I have within myself. And that's who I believed in, me personally. So I never really looked at it being extremely hard, but I just knew that I had to go through it. I knew I had to overcome these folks that not believing in what they're seeing and what they actually, in terms of once you get the actual play, then you make your judgment then, as opposed to just judging the book by its cover.
I want to take it back to high school because obviously when it comes down to the recruiting, recruiting is definitely different now. Like within, a press of a button, you can get your tape in front of the world. So coaches from anywhere can see you. But how does somebody come from who's 5'3", come from Maryland to get to the ACC? Of course, ACC4 is always kind of been known as the best basketball conference, and play at Wake Forest. How do you get over maybe the judgment from coaches who may look at the stat sheet and you're like, wait a minute, who's this guy? Like, no, I'm looking for somebody 6'2". How do you like change those minds as you're trying to get into college from high school?
Well, it started as a kid, pursuing and developing the skill set. But, as you keep climbing the ladder, I think the work that we put in and then being able to be on one of the greatest high school teams that I believe that ever been assembled, having that type of talent, it draws that type of attention. And being able to, kids that's in the inner city don't normally get a lot of attention. But when you have that type of talent on one team, you're making a lot of noise, you're getting a lot of attention, then that brings in the outsiders. Folks, in terms of who know the game of basketball, they want to hear about what's going on with these kids that's in the city. And that's how we got our attention. And for me, I knew I was the smallest. I knew that I had to do other things in order to bring more attention to myself. And the way I played the game was totally different. And I always felt like when the recruits come in and look at the other players, I want to make sure they talked about me on the way out. And that was the way of me mainly, and it all came down to practice or whatever the case may be. But you want to make sure that you was out there doing the things and impacting the game in a way where it was like, wow, damn, maybe so. Just giving these coaches a little more, thinking to go behind as opposed to just writing me off.
What was it about Wake Forest that attracted you to the school?
Well, I was being recruited, highly recruited. So I had other offers. I went to Seton Hall. I took my visit there. I had Boston University, Maryland, which was a local non-visit. So, but Wake Forest was, it was different. When I went on my visit, got a chance to meet some of the players, the Kenny Greens, the Delaney Rudds, and, the Anthony Teaches of the world, Danny Young, those guys. And, I kind of took a liking into them. I liked what was going on with the program. I looked at my situation mainly. I knew that I had 1 year to probably come off the bench. And that was challenging for me because I never came off the bench my entire career. And being able to look at that as a way of, possibly, learning from a guy who's a senior. And then the academic standpoint, you feel like this was a challenge. If things didn't work out for me on the court, then, I had something to fall back on. And ACC was, as you alluded to, it was the toughest conference back then in the country. And having some of the elite players already, the Michael Jordan, the Ralph Sampson, the Lenny Bias of the world that was already in there. I mean, that was a big lead. And then my mom and dad, they could just, my dad was in prison and my mom was home. They couldn't afford to come watch me play. So they could just easily turn on their Saturday on the television on Saturday. They see their little baby play every weekend.
That's big. Somebody who's 5'9", you definitely was somebody who I definitely looked up towards for sure. Because it's like, yeah, like I could do it. What are you talking about? I'm too short to do this. Yeah, I wanted to also talk about maybe the mentorship, because I mean, you came to Wake Forest. And there was a lot of great players at Wake Forest before you, but for me, my first impression of Wake Forest, I remember Muggsy Bogues just because I was born in '86. I remember Muggsy Bogues, and then I remember after that Randolph Childress, and then it's Tim Duncan, and then you have Josh Howard and Chris Paul that came along. What is your mentorship been like with some of those guys that came there afterwards, and what do you think your legacy is with that program to be able to get those type of recruits to come to Wake Forest as well?
Well, I understand that I had an impact on that regards, and then I took totally advantage of it because I wanted to make sure that they understood the importance of not only when you leave Wake Forest, how to continue going to be the professional that you are. And Chris Paul and Tim Duncan and all the guys. I mean, you got Johnson still is in the lead as well. You got Ish Smith. Mm-hmm. You got a lot of guys that came through. As you mentioned, Josh Howard and those guys that came through the lead. But, when you have a small fraternity like Wake Forest, we still connected, and I still want to make sure these guys understand, how important it is to continue to get back. And because it goes on, and with the kids that's there today, because the tradition lives on. And I understood that once I left, and I want to make sure that, they understood that as well. And to this day, I'm so grateful for seeing what Chris CP is doing, with the university, giving back and that sort of thing, and continue to keep them on that platform. And then here it is, we playing well this year. So that's exciting, within itself.
Yeah.
How big was the adjustment going from Baltimore to Winston-Salem?
Major. It was a culture shock, it was major. But it was something that I wanted and I had to adjust to. And I made it work. Again, those were some tough times, again, a city kid going into a rural area like Wake Forest was challenging. But at the time, I wanted something badly, which was, to be successful in life. And I had to put in the work in order to make that happen.
I'm sure there's been some growth though to Winston-Salem since you've been there. I just want to bring this up because Dennis always had a joke. I'm from Greensboro, but Dennis has a joke that Winston-Salem was just the stop on the way to Asheville. But I'm sure you've seen the growth in Winston-Salem from when you were at Wake Forest in the 80s, until now. I mean, there's more things to do there, and I'm sure there's more that the city can offer kids who come to the area.
Oh, absolutely. And they had a lot to offer back then as well. So I don't know what Dennis talking about to stop it.
See, Dennis, there you go. Muggsy put you in his place.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we had a lot of great things going on in Winston-Salem and then in the whole Triangle region, I should say, So it was exciting. I wasn't from there, but I got opportunity to grow from there. And here it is. I've been still in North Carolina ever since. So I've been here for pretty much my entire adult life. So I'm grateful and honored to continue to be part of this wonderful state. But Winston-Salem, again, it has a lot to offer substance-wise as well, because, of course, a lot of renovations have taken place. And then, of course, the education that you get when you go on the campus. But we got so many things in Winston-Salem. You got Winston-Salem State. You got a lot of things there. So, HBCU schools as well.
I told him I need to take him over to Winston-Salem one Saturday. I need to take him to buy sweet potatoes, get something to eat, maybe take him to Dewey's, get some square cakes, and then maybe we go to Bowman Gray to see some racing or something like that or whatever. I just need him to experience it because he thinks it's just like a little rest stop. But he's going from Raleigh to Asheville. I'm just going to stop over in Winston-Salem really quick, get some gas, and then I'll go on my way.
Yeah. Well, introduce him, and give him a little history about it. He'll appreciate it a lot more.
Chris is trying to get me banned from the whole 3-4, man.
Hilarious. Yeah. You mentioned the state of North Carolina, and you've been here, but like I would say, as a kid, talking to my dad, and my dad is maybe a little bit older than you. He's 60, and he's from North Carolina. He grew up, there was no professional teams here. The professional teams were basically not really professional, but the teams that people cared about were the ACC teams, Duke, North Carolina, NC State, Wake Forest. And then the Charlotte Hornets kind of come along. And then you end up coming to the Charlotte Hornets. And I just remember being a kid and seeing you, Larry Johnson, Alonzo Mourning, everybody on that team. And it was just so exciting to watch. And it gave you some pride about being from here, and you had a hand in making North Carolina and Charlotte in particular cool. You see everybody wearing the retro Charlotte Hornets gear. How do you feel about that? Every time you see that, you see the retro Charlotte Hornets gear and people kind of reliving the past because of how exciting and fun those teams were back in the 90s.
Well, it's exciting. I mean, again, Carolina was considered as you mentioned, it was a collegiate type of state, and those four schools that you mentioned, those was major rivalries, and because of the conference and because of what there was availability here. But then again, once the NBA came in '88, they became more knowledgeable about the professional sports, and having the opportunity to come back and play for, the state was such an honor. And then, as you say, for all the kids that's wearing the teal and purple, the retros, starter jackets. I mean, that's always special. Teal and purple, Alexander Julian did an amazing job creating those colors and bringing that type of, identity to the state and to the city. So, and not only just locally, it was national. Every time you travel nationally, you'll see those type of colors, represented. So it's amazing to see it continue to be relevant to this day. I mean, Hornets made a big impact when it first came in the league. I mean, we led the lead in attendance for 9-10 straight years. Yep. And not only that, having the opportunity to now be relevant in terms of with the product that you put out on the floor and having some success. So I mean, it's good to see that we got the name back from the Bobcats. So it's good to have the Hornets where it started to be back in the city and back in the state.
I hated that whole Bobcats thing.
Yeah. Let's not relive that part of the Charlotte basketball history. Now, during your time with the Hornets, in my opinion, you became the true star of the movie Space Jam. What was it like being on Space Jam, being involved in that movie and asked to be involved?
The true star.
It was awesome. It was awesome, man. It was an honor. I mean, being on set with MJ and LJ and Pat and Charles and Sean. I mean, we had an amazing time. I mean, the chemistry was really great. You know, we got a chance to witness Michael and his comeback at the time. You know, they built a little arena for him. So a lot of things was going on behind the scenes, but the actual shooting, we had a lot of fun on set. I mean, a lot of card playing, a lot of jokes, a lot of things went behind the scenes in the trailer. So a lot of things that was happening that we enjoy. And I'm grateful to be part of such now it's become one of the iconic movies that was made. And even though we got a Space Jam 2 out there.
Now, outside of the book that's coming out in May that we talked about, you know, and these days, what's Mugsy Bogues doing? What's keeping you busy every day? I know after you talk to us, you're about to play some golf, but what's keeping you busy every day? What's keeping you going?
Well, with the Mugsy Bogues Family Foundation, for one, being able to continue to provide scholarship for, you know, trade-bound students and feeding the community. I mean, we have 2 pillars where we really focus on scholarship and feeding the community and trying to, you know, bring in those resources to make them continue to be possible. And we're so thankful for a lot of our sports sponsors, you know, the Healthy Blues of North Carolina, Lowe's, CPI, Food Lion, Loves and Fisher. So I'm so thankful for all of them, and the Charlotte Hornets as well, for being part of, you know, our can for these families, as well as giving back for these scholarships. So that's what keeps me busy. I serve as an ambassador for the Hornets, serve as an ambassador for the NBA. And I'm not going to the All-Star game this year, as in Cleveland. We'll take this year off. So getting ready, again, like you say, promote this book and some other things, move forward.
Well, we don't blame you for not going to Cleveland. That's totally well. That's
you see, he's always hating on the cities, right?
Cleveland. Come on, man. It's Cleveland.
He's also a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, so you know there's a little.
Oh yeah. Oh, okay.
A little bit there.
The truth comes out. The truth comes out. All right. My final question, Muggsy. Having played professionally in Charlotte, playing in the ACC, what makes basketball in North Carolina, in this state, so special?
Well, of course, it's the schools. You know, the schools that attract the type of talent that they attract. I mean, you just can't get around that. I mean, of course, you know, buildings are buildings, but players are players. And when you bring them into that forefront, I mean, hey, you know, the student allows you to continue to be, you know, those type of fan base. So I say it's always the schools and the athletes that, you know, it's so much camaraderie. I mean, big rivalries, I should say. You got the Duke and Carolina, you know, about the matchup. So it's big. And Wake Forest and State, I mean, I'm sad that they took the Big Four away. I mean, because that used to be something really special around here. Having those Big Four, you know, continue to always compete, because you got about 20 teams in the ACC these days. But it's all good. I guess money speaks values. But I'm just, again, it's the state, it's the players, and it's the school that allows this thing to be relevant and continue on. And players are going to continue to come through this tape.
I have a couple more questions before we let you go. And with the book, you know, as I said, Stephen Curry has a spot that he wrote in there for you, and he's of course a huge star. But you of course known him since he was a little kid. And I just want to know, like, what do you remember from Steph as a little kid, as he was kind of like following his dad around and you know, starting to play the sport of basketball himself?
Well, they were just little fun kids, you know. Steph and my kid was just always around us. I mean, the locker rooms, you know, anytime they get a chance to play with the ball, they grabbing the ball. Of course, they wasn't distracted because we was on the other side. And then you come back, but you knew that they loved the game. They had a passion for it. He had a passion for it. And been able to continue to improve as he was younger. He had a small frame. No one really thought that this kid even can play in high school, because he was small, but he had a shot where he was pushing it it was a push shot until Dell, one day we got into the YMCA and Dell kind of took his shot from here and brought it up here. And then that's where that senior year was all he needed in terms of getting people to start to look at him, even though Virginia Tech, where Dell went, won the red shirt, and they didn't really want to give him an opportunity. And he took his talent up to Davidson, to where, everything was history from there. He got the opportunity to shine. But that lets you know that, you never can say what a kid can do.
I went to UNCG at the time when he was at Davidson and SoCon together, and we had a good squad: Kyle Hines, Dwayne Johnson, and Kevin Alexiak, ourselves. And we were, I think it was my junior year and their junior year, the guys I just named. And then we're thinking, okay, we're gonna try to get to that SoCon championship. I'm watching in the stands. I look over to my left. I'm like, that's Del Curry. What is he doing here? And so I look on the roster. It's like, oh, he has a son. Okay, all right, his son is playing. And the first half, we are killing Davidson. And we're like, oh, man, we're going to get this. Second half, Steph comes out. He just kept hitting threes. And I think that game he may have had like 35 or something like that. And I was like, who is this kid? And I just kind of kept tabs on him for a little bit. And then like the next year, I was just like, man, this dude's going to be special in the NBA. People were laughing at me. Like, no, it's coming from Davidson. What are you talking about? Like, no, like this dude's going to be special in the NBA. And it's kind of crazy to see where he's at right now. So it's cool. You also got a chance to see him as a kid. Last question about your memoir coming out in April. What is something that maybe we wouldn't normally know about you just from, knowing you from Wake Forest, from the Hornets, from everything that you've done, that we're going to learn about you in this book that you have coming out?
Well, this book is my second stance. My first one was in Atlanta Giants. And I think when I did that, when I was more or less, it was a memory of my dad when he passed. And it was more or less about how I made it to the NBA and that sort of thing. This one here is more about the substance, in terms of the impact that I had on the younger players like Alonzo Mourning, the Vince Carter, and, of course, stories about my career and all that sort of stuff, and how I was able to overcome my challenges from the projects, being shot at the age of 5 and so forth, and being able to still maintain my vision of what I want to see, what I wanted for myself out of life. But and it talks about me and my wife, reconnecting again after being divorced for 10 years. So that's something very rarely happens. So there's a lot of things that you can, people get a more insight of who I am and what I've been through throughout my journey to where I am today.
Can't wait to read it. Can't wait to pick it up. And, I've had the pleasure of meeting you at one of the Chris Paul events, bowling events he had back when I used to work at 102 Jams in Greensboro, probably like 2007 or 8 or something like that. But it was a pleasure meeting you then, pleasure talking to you now. Now as I'm an actual professional and not in college anymore, and glad to have you here and looking forward to reading that book.
Well, thank you again. Appreciate you guys having me, and I hope you guys do get an opportunity to read it, because again, it's trying to give enough. I think it's for kids as well as for adults, because I want the kids to understand that anything is possible. No one should be able to dictate who you are, what you should be in life. You should be able to visualize and then take steps and be that person that you see that you want to be. And hopefully that'll give them that inspiration to become that. And then again, just the journeys of where I've been and how I was able to impact and make some influences.
Forgive me, really quick. I just thought about something. You were kind of playing against Coach K at the beginning of his career at Wake Forest. Really quick thoughts as he's coming towards the end of his career right now as a head coach, and kind of what you noticed from him even back then playing against him at the early part of his career.
What a class guy! What a class act! I mean, the kids that he invested in them wholeheartedly. Not just about the game, even off the court. The Johnny Dawkins, the Tommy Amkers, to Mark Allery, all those guys that I know personally. always told me how influential Coach K was to them on and off the court. And he speaks, he lives it by his actions. And for him to continue to impact those young youth and bring them in a situation where they have an opportunity to be successful, I'm always going to be grateful for. I'm always going to look up to a guy to have that type of standards. And he did it for 40 years. I mean, 40 years, man, to be coaching on the sidelines. I mean, and to do it the right way. It's just hard fathom to just to put it in words. But I'm happy to know him, happy the opportunity to compete against him, and I wish him nothing but the best because he definitely deserve it.
Absolutely. Muggsy Bogues, can't wait to see the book, or to read the book, I should say. And much luck on your future and your success. And good to talk to you today.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you, man. You guys have a good one, too.
Good luck on the course.
Yes, I'm going to need it.
All right. We want to thank Muggsy Bogues, Brittany Bogues, the whole Bogues family for allowing us to be able to have that time with him. Legend in the game, of course. And not just because of his height, but a lot of it does have to do with his height and what he overcame. Imagine, I'm sure a lot of people have had this discussion. Imagine if Muggsy Bogues was the same player at 6'3". He might be in a discussion as one of the best of all time. Yeah. I mean, because he was really good at what he did, and to be so small. And I think one of the things that I liked as a little kid, seeing him, of course, like, you're a kid, you're smaller than everybody else anyway. Like, you're looking up all these big adults. And there were times where, at church, I was playing basketball against big adults, and I felt like, okay, this is my time to be Muggsy Bogues, because when you look on TV, you see all these guys, these big trees, and then you see little Muggsy right there, like next to him. And it was just interesting to see the stark difference in the size. And he always held his own. You never thought that the game was too big for him, no pun intended, but for real. And you ever felt like, the game was too big for him, and he always performed. So, it was cool to see him there, and cool to see him in his post-playing life still making an impact on the game of basketball, for sure.
Absolutely. It is fun. We mentioned before we got to the conversation with Muggsy how the Charlotte Hornets would do that throwback night. They bring back the old school court and things like that. We're seeing it oftentimes in society nowadays, this feeling of nostalgia where we go back to the days, when we were younger. For example, this Super Bowl halftime show, we were bringing out artists who were big in the 80s and 90s. We're also seeing the Charlotte Hornets having those throwback nights. They changed their name from Bobcats to Hornets, the second iteration of professional basketball in Charlotte. We'll also if you look back, I actually remember my girlfriend sent me this a while back, Chris, back, I'd probably say November, about how the Orlando Magic actually used to have their own original theme song, and they actually are bringing that back as well. So we're starting to see these old things coming back and being new again. And it's not only for us and people of our age, us people in our mid 30s, can kind of relive those days, or people even older than us, but it's also fun for these young kids that come in and be like, oh, wait, what's this? Like, it's new to them. So it's a reliving of the past. It's the same thing we see with music. We see it in terms of entertainment. We see it in sports. What's old is new again. Things get recycled through. And to me, it's really cool seeing people that are young. We see a young LaMelo Ball or some of these young players that play for the Hornets. It's like, man, we were back 30 years ago when we got to see Muggsy and Larry Johnson. It's like, this is the newest iteration of that. It's really cool seeing what's old, recycle its way through and then, blossom, so to speak.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the name of the album from Bruno Mars was 24 Karat Magic.
I think so.
Yeah, I had to make sure I looked it up. If you listen to that album, that entire album is a late 80s, early 90s sound.
Yeah.
And that album released in 2015, 2016, somewhere around that time. And he literally took an old sound that hadn't been used in a long time and repurposed it to make it sound new and fresh. And it wasn't sounding like anything else that was out at the time. And there's other people who would experiment with older sounds and stuff like that. It's not like that is a completely new concept, and that Bruno Mars was the first person to do it. But that's also goat lens to what you were talking about when it comes down to what's old is new. We live in a society, especially with social media and just all the technological advances, that every time we're always trying to advance. We're always trying to advance.
Mhm.
And sometimes if you just go back and peek back to like, yeah, something might seem old. Like if you remember those old, what's the old T-Mobile phones that used to like the screen used to flip up, the Sidekick.
Yeah.
I think the Sidekick would do amazing right now.
Oh yeah.
Right. Because, after like for a little bit, when the BlackBerry came in and made the Sidekick old, everybody's like, oh, Sidekick, whatever. The Sidekick, the way it used to light up, the way it used to flip, if you put a touch screen on that thing and also you have the buttons and all that, and it had the video capabilities, I think the Sidekick will go crazy right now in the world because, as you said, what's old is new. Sometimes you need to be able to miss something and something not being cool for a while and then bring it back to realize how cool it actually really was.
Yeah, it's you look at the music industry, vinyl is a massive industry because some people just don't want to listen to things digitally. I don't want to listen to music all the time through my phone or through a computer. I want to be able to listen to it through a set of speakers as opposed to something digital. So I want to have that original noise. I want to have that sound. We see retro gaming is a big thing, not only in terms of gaming systems. Like for example, I just bought about a few weeks ago an old N64. Playing some games that I played back in the 90s. My girlfriend and I are actually playing a game that we enjoyed, or she'd really enjoyed much playing with her older brothers. So we're enjoying that. We also look at places that like barcades, these bars that, hey, guess what? While you're doing it, come play, Asteroids, Galaga, Pac-Man, these old school, Ninja Turtles games, these old school arcade games. So it's this arcades for a long time were big in the 80s, went away for a while, and now they're the cool thing again. So it's just, again, it's everything is recycling back through, and it is nice sometimes to slow down and reminisce a little bit about what used to be, because I think it helps us appreciate those things a little bit more. But it's also nice when you get to rediscover those things too.
Right.
It's like going back and listening to old music. It's like, man, I remember listening to that back in the 90s. Like, this was super cool. Well, what did I miss back in that time? I can go back and rediscover those things. So it's a lot of fun going back and looking on those things.
I love where we are with technology and innovation, but I also think that in some ways we do move too fast to lend to what you were just saying.
Slow down,
because we don't get a chance to appreciate what we have. Like, I remember when the iPod came out, and that was just a crazy concept because you used to have these CD books, that you used to have to carry around. Yeah. Which, first off, I miss CDs. I love CDs. If CDs were still a thing, I would definitely buy them. But with the iPod, I do miss that. I do miss having a separate device for my music instead of it all being on the phone where I do everything else. Yeah. I understand why it's important, but I also just kind of miss, it being a separate device where, I could go to the gym, leave my phone in the car, just listen to my music. I have over 1,000 songs in my pocket and be able to do go. Just figure it out from there. And I absolutely love it. So anyway, it was cool talking to Muggsy Bogues. It was cool kind of reminiscing on the old days. And I think that's something we should do a lot more. You know what I'm saying?
100%. Yeah, it's good to reminisce. It's good to detach a little bit too. Like we're so like next thing. But sometimes it's good to slow down and take a step back. And I think it's something we all need a little bit more of.
Slow it down. I just want to get to know you, but don't turn around because a pretty round thing looks good to me. All right. I'm not going to sing y'all to death. Y'all can check out Bobby Valentino on your own, even though he's from Atlanta and this is about North Carolina. Yeah, exactly. Thank you guys for listening to the Culture State Podcast. I'm Chris Lee. That's Dennis Jamel Cox. Give us 5 stars if you're listening on Apple. And then, of course, if you're watching on YouTube, please give us a like. Please share. Please subscribe to 99.9 The Fans YouTube page and continue to watch us on WRL Sports Plus. If you don't get it in your local area, WRLSportsFan.com. You can watch it there.
Also, I believe, Chris, now you're on Spotify. You can give that 5-star too. So if you're on Spotify listening, do it on Apple and Spotify. Do both. Because
we should take it off of Spotify because of Joe Rogan.
Yeah, come on. Okay. All right, as Chris says bye, I'm going to thank our sponsor, Papa Murphy's Pizza. Give them a follow on Twitter and Instagram at Papa Murphy's. Tuesdays, $10.99 large Papa Murphy's pizza. Change the way you pizza. Chris is back, but guess what, Chris? Sorry, we're out. Time's over. We're out.
The Culture State Podcast, part of the Capital Broadcasting Podcast Network, with new shows coming out every Wednesday. Download and subscribe from wherever you get your podcasts, including the WREL Sports Fan app.